Hey there. If you enjoy my work, please take a moment to like the video. I need your help if I'm going to resurrect this channel. Greetings, my friends. Mr. X Dreams here. I don't remember who, but someone recently mentioned they wanted a nice, long, old-school style story from me. For some reason, that comment kind of stuck with me for quite a while. So much so that I decided to take a look into the past. Emails from dreamers who reached out but never got their stories told on my channel. There are so many great stories I really haven't been able to get to yet. However, this one, which I received all the way back in 2017, 6 years ago at the time of this recording, has always been on my to-do list. Until now, that is. If you happen to see this, and you're the one who asked for a long story, or something to that effect, let me know in the comments section down below. If you enjoy the story or have some interesting theories or experiences you'd like to share, let me know that too, especially as it relates to the content of this particular story. To assist in this endeavor, you may notice that I employ the use of AI imaging to help set some of the scenes, especially in critical moments. Let me know what you think about that. I have to tell you, this one is a bit of a journey, a fascinating one that spans many years. Make sure you stick around for the ending because it escalates quite quickly. I'm happy you're here to experience it with me, my friend. As per the old ways, I will offer some of my own comments after the story, so stick around for those as well. In the meanwhile, sit back, relax, and listen. Aloha, Mr. X. My name is Daisy, but you can call me D. Got a story for you. When I was a little girl back in the 1970s, I lived on the big island of Hawaii with my grandma, mom, dad, auntie, and uncle. I remember when everyone was at work, only my mom and I were left home, and we were never in the house. We would always be out on the patio. The weird thing was, even though the house was empty, we would often hear cabinets opening, closing, even slamming, sending dishes crashing to the floor. When I would go with my mom to investigate the noises, thinking there would be a mess of broken dishes to clean up, there was never anything there. Everything was always in its place. For some reason, I would sometimes hear people playing pool, the noises of pool balls clacking together, even the strong odor of cigar smoke, even though we didn't have a pool table at all in the house. One particular night, I was woken up by the sound of someone calling my name. I got up and saw a dark shadow by the door. I figured it was my uncle calling me, so I answered him. But the shadow didn't move or respond. I stared for a bit before going back to my room. Then, minutes later, I suddenly got extremely sick and puked all over myself. I never figured out what that was all about. A couple nights after that, we all heard someone running down the hallway from my grandma's room toward the stairs. The footsteps were followed by the unmistakable sound of someone falling down the stairs. Hard, chest-thumping bumps went all down the stairwell walls and came to the floor with a thud. During the commotion, we all woke up and scrambled into the halls. Everyone was scared to death. We assumed it was my uncle coming back from a late shift at work. However, when we all clambered downstairs, there was no one there at all. I'm telling you, Mr. X, my dad is one of the toughest Puerto Ricans you could ever meet. But even he admitted to me that night he was pretty terrified. Over time, we all moved out one by one until only my grandma remained in that house by herself. As she got older and became ill, I overheard her telling my mom that the spirits visited the house more and more often. Eventually, it became too much for her to bear, and she sold the old house, moved in with my uncle. Since then, the house has been sold at least 5 times, probably more by now. My auntie told me my grandparents got a great deal on the house because a man hanged himself in one of the rooms. They never found out which one, but it seems that might explain a lot. The house still stands on Hinano Street in Waikia. I don't know who owns it now, but I drove by it about 15 years ago. It still gave me the creeps. The next series of events happened in 2008 when I decided to take a job working in Baghdad, Iraq. If you're wondering what possessed me to work in a war zone, at the time I was in court with my ex-husband. I had to get a lawyer, and as you know, they don't come cheap. I needed money, so I got a government contractor job as a mechanic's assistant. When I first got to Iraq, or the sandbox as many called it, I was excited to be there, New smells, sounds, and of course, the occasional rocket attack. You never knew who was bombing the crap out of you, or if you would find yourself in the blast radius of whatever came over the fence. At first, all was well. I went to work every day, called my family every chance I got, and chilled in my hooch to escape both the heat and those dreaded camel spiders. After about 3 months of normal daily events, sleep, work, eat, and sleep again, 7 days a week, the same cycle, I started to hear stories from the old-timers, the folks who had been on non-stop contracts since 2002 and never even went back to the U.S. The stories they had were strange. At first, the stories were background noise to me, nothing more. I would listen to their chatter while filling out a forklift paperwork or tool issue forms, and I would just smile and nod to whatever they were saying. Then one night, that changed. On that particular night, I decided to wake up at 2 a.m. to call my family in Hawaii. I never had any issues walking the streets alone on the base, heading to the phone center. I had done it many times before during the day, so I figured one night would be the same deal pretty much. As I was bebopping along the rocky dirt road, I suddenly got this feeling of isolation. I looked down the street, up the street, in every direction, and noticed there was no one around. Even at night, it's pretty odd to find yourself completely alone on an active forward operating military base. At first, I didn't think too much of it, but then I started seeing shadows on the big concrete walls that would protect the compound from bomb blasts, sniper fire, and rockets. I didn't immediately register the shadow as being odd. I figured maybe there were people up ahead I didn't see yet. As I walked, watching the shadows moving about, I never saw those people, the people I was expecting to see crossing my path. I began hearing footsteps behind me, and I told myself there must have been some soldiers getting ready for a shift change or something. I turned around. Nothing. No one. I kept calm and dismissed everything. Reminded myself of how tired I was waking up at 2 in the morning. I was a little sleep deprived after all. I kept walking, but I did pick up the pace. More shadows on the walls, wandering back and forth. I looked around and still not a human being in sight. I was the only one on that dark, moonlit road. By the time I got to the phone center, I was a bit unnerved. But seeing the nice Filipino girl at the desk helped put me at ease, at least a bit. She was the first flesh and blood person I'd seen that day. I signed in to use the phone and went into the booth and called my family. They weren't happy that I left to go to work in Iraq, and my aunt voiced her fears because she heard my company had a policy stating we had to have a kidnapping insurance, just in case. I guess I made the mistake of telling someone in my family that I needed it, because the company I worked for, they specifically said they would not cover me if I somehow got lost in transit or otherwise abducted. After the call, I felt my nerves tingling for the 15 to 20 minute walk back to my hooch. For those of you that don't know, we call the hooch, that's just your living quarters. It's usually some small shack or something like that, a wooden structure or even a tent sometimes when you're overseas on a military base. So when you hear the word hooch, it's just, where you lay your head at night, pretty much. I'll start that part over for you. After the call, I felt my nerves tingling about the 15 to 20 minute walk back to my hooch. I thanked the nice attendant and left. Walking back, I told myself not to get all paranoid. After all, it was probably just my drowsy brain and its silly imagination. I power walked it back to my hooch, saw no shadows, heard no footsteps, gratefully. The next day at work, I found myself preoccupied, though. I kept wondering who I could tell about the strange walk to the phone center. I had to tell someone about the shadows, but I didn't want my new boss and fellow mechanics, all men, thinking I was some crazy, scared woman who was out of her depth in a war zone. So I opted instead to keep quiet. That day, I got a call from my boss. "Daisy, go return the forklift, and don't take 20 years about it." "Yes, sir," I replied. I got to the forklift office, and there are the old-timers looking at me while I did the paperwork. For some reason, one of them asked me if I was okay. I told him I was good, but I asked why he was asking me. He paused for a few seconds and said, "Well, when you first came here, you were like sunshine. Now you look like, I don't know, like you're not happy to be here." I lifted my head from the paperwork and decided to just put it out there. Remember those stories you mentioned the last time I was here? Well, I've seen the things that you guys were talking about. He looked deep in thought for a moment, then asked, "Want to go to lunch?" At lunch, he told me all kinds of stories about shadow people he'd seen on the base, phantom footsteps he heard, wild beasts that roamed the night, unexplained lights, angry spirits. He explained that Baghdad was once known as Babylon. I sat there listening, taken aback. I wasn't too surprised given the life I've lived, but for the first time I thought, what did I get myself into? I wondered if the money was good enough to stay there. After about 2 seconds, I decided that yes it was. Well, so I thought at the time anyway. A couple weeks later, I was assigned a battle buddy due to the high kidnapping rate of U.S. personnel, civilian and military, that was taking place. For now, we shall call him Jay. Battle buddies were meant to look out for each other and keep each other safe. As far as battle buddies go, Jay and I were a pretty good fit. We became relatively close in a short period of time because we were both prior military and we spent a lot of time exchanging stories about when we were enlisted. I have to admit his stories were a lot better than mine since he was an airborne ranger. Unlike me, this was far from his first tour in Iraq. Not long after we were put together, Jay told me he was being moved to another part of the base, and he wasn't too happy about where he was going. A week later, some coworkers and I went to visit Jay, and when we got to his new living quarters, I was completely appalled. The place was barely fit for an animal to live there, let alone a decorated veteran. It was oppressively dark, dank, muddy even. The green faded paint on the building made it look like something out of a torture prison snuff film. I asked Jay how he felt living there. He said he was okay with it, but his demeanor said otherwise. We stayed outside talking for about an hour, but I had no interest in going inside. In fact, I couldn't leave quick enough. About a month later, I got a call on my cell early one morning. The voice was low, in a frantic whisper. Dude, you gotta get over here. It was Jay. Despite his urgency, I was barely awake and not in the mood to talk at all. It wasn't even light out yet. Jay? Is that you? What the hell is your problem, man? It's like really, really early. Look, there's something wrong with this place. You gotta come get me, please. Begrudgingly, I got up, got the keys to the van and drove up there, but I didn't see him outside. I asked myself, what the hell is going on? I pulled up and shined my headlights on his door, walked up and knocked. Jay? Hello? Nothing. Reluctantly, I opened the door, shined the flashlight into the dark, musty hooch. After scanning the room, I saw him in the corner, obviously scared stiff. I couldn't fully comprehend what I was seeing. This 6-foot-tall, battle-hardened badass had himself jammed up into the corner of his own room. Jay, hey buddy, is that you in the corner? Seriously bro, what the hell are you doing? He told me there was something in his room. I searched with my flashlight and saw nothing. I finally, for the sake of my friend, walked inside. I moved towards him and asked, dude, what's going on? Who's in your room? Is it like a woman or something? No, there's something in my room. I stared at him, thinking maybe he was jacked up on rippets. If you know, you know. Jay was still standing there, white as a sheet. I began looking around and suddenly, I saw it. I looked over to Jay. Hey, is that it? Over there? What the hell is that, Jay? I asked, forgetting for a moment that his guess was as good as mine. In the corner of the room stood this massive figure. I couldn't help but stare at it. It was like the shadow of a man, but impossibly tall. Blacker than any darkness I could imagine. It stood there, swaying slowly back and forth. I got the distinct feeling it was contemplating on attacking us, maybe with a swing of its disturbingly long arms. This was much larger and more unsettling than anything I had seen in my life. I motioned to Jay, and he finally snapped out of it. We both bolted out of the hooch and never went back. Fast forward a couple of months later, I went back to Hawaii for some R&R, visited my family in Maui. I noticed one of my cousins wasn't very happy to see me, and I wondered why. I was ready to shrug it off and not think anything of it. But she came out and told me, Daisy, I think you brought something back with you." I wondered what she meant by it, but she didn't want to explain further. All she would tell me is that I needed to go into town and see the kahuna, a Hawaiian priest. Suddenly I had a bad feeling about the whole trip home. Of course, when we went to see the kahuna, he agreed he should pray over me. He insisted something had attached itself to me somehow. My mind carried me back to standing in the doorway of Jay's room, staring at the towering shadow in the corner, with my flashlight beaming into its black void. I ain't gonna lie, Mr. X. Of all the things I've been through, that was by far the spookiest. The kahuna and his prayer team surrounded me and began praying in Hawaiian language. He told me not to open my eyes. They prayed for about 45 minutes straight. It felt weird, even a little awkward. I myself was scared and sort of drained at various intervals. When I was finally allowed to open my eyes, I looked at my cousin and saw her staring past me with a shocked, almost terrified expression on her face. For some reason, my first thought was, "Oh my God, we are all going to die." I turned, and something on my shoulder immediately caught my eye. A dark, wispy shape rested there, something blacker than black. I kept turning, and I saw it was an ink-black hand, or maybe some kind of elongated paw with long nails or claws pressing down, digging into my collarbone. The look of it made me think of a wet dog or a wolf. I still remember the pain I felt in my shoulder. The prayers became louder and more rhythmic. "Keep praying," the kahuna whispered. I closed my eyes, grateful for the break from the sight of whatever was touching me. I joined in on the prayer, hoping it would somehow leave me alone. When the prayers ended, the thing was gone. The pain had left me. I collapsed onto the ground and thanked everyone there. Someone brought me a small cup of water and I drank it like it was the first drink I had ever had. Sometime after this incident, I gave Jay a call and told him what happened. I could hear the deep fear in his voice when I suggested that he do the same thing I did. Go to a priest of some sort, as soon as he got back to the States. I asked him to do it for both our sake, just to make sure. I have to admit, though, I sort of blamed him for what happened, and I let him know how I felt. When it came time to return from my R&R and go back to Baghdad, I decided to submit my resignation instead. To this day, I've never gone back there. I fell out of contact with Jay, so I have no idea if he was ever affected again, if he ever saw the shadow creature after that day. Over the years, I've wondered how many soldiers went to the Middle East and came back with things like that on their backs. Soldiers often suffer from insomnia, mental health issues, and other things that make it hard for them to be a part of normal civilian life again. And I wonder how much of that might be related to these strange, shadowed beings. I was taking a class with a group of veterans and happened to meet a lady who worked as a prison guard on the same base that Jay and I were on. We exchanged a few stories and I told her a little about the experience I had there. Oddly enough, she mentioned seeing shadows on the base as well. Another guy heard us talking and said he had seen strange things while overseas too. After making this comment, he got really quiet before up and leaving the room. I still hear footsteps in my house from time to time, feelings of being watched, even mysterious pains doctors couldn't explain. I don't really know what to make of it. Anyway, thanks for listening, Mr. X. I hope you have a great day, and I'm looking forward to more of your stories. Sincerely, Daisy. Now let's see what the dreamers listening to the live reading had to say about tonight's story. Aaron England was pretty quick on the draw. Their first guess was a spirit attachment, and they called it pretty early. They also said, true or not, it's a pretty believable story. I've had my own long-term attachment, and they definitely go a lot like this. To me, first of all, congratulations to Aaron England for calling it basically right when I started the story. I'm not sure how you got that, but pretty good call. Maybe because you saw the thumbnail, I guess it says it followed me home. Well, very astute dreamer you are, my friend. The idea of attachments has always been very disturbing to me, especially the fact that there's really no way we can predict, or I guess some people believe they can defend themselves from attachments at times, using amulets or different types of things like that. Who knows? I mean, I don't know what the efficacy is for that, but the idea that at any given moment, without your knowledge or consent, something can kind of just latch onto you has always been a really scary idea to me. Graphic Nightmares says, at Aaron England, I like that idea. I'll say negative energy manifestation. And that seems like something I need to really look into. I said to the chat a minute ago, it feels like something that I probably should already know, but I might have to do a little research. Graphic Nightmares also said they saw a shadow once as well. Had no idea what I was seeing until I followed it around a corner in my house and it was gone. Yeah, that could definitely be a jarring and scary experience. I've been known, there's a lot of you all know, people that have been with me for a long time, you know that I have a family history with shadow entities, going back to at least my mother and her siblings. I think I have that in my comments that I'll kind of mention and gloss over a little bit later. Tariko Tomoso says, I wonder if the house growing up was some kind of gateway for spirits. Perhaps growing up there made Daisy more targeted by the spirits in the future. That's a really interesting point. I would definitely imagine, although I don't know the exact connection between shadow entities and spirits, on this channel we've had so many theories and discussions, really amazing discussions about what and what not shadow people may or may not be, whether they have any connection to humans at all, if they were humans or they are humans in another, in a neighboring dimension, or if there's some other sort of entity altogether, if they're malevolent or if they're just benign and we see them as scary because we don't understand them. But your line of thinking of, if Daisy was exposed to something or some scenario or circumstance that made her more likely to see these things, could that affect her being aware of their presence later on in the future as well? Or maybe is it something within herself, or is it something within her environment that has caused that? Really interesting. I don't think we've considered that angle before. Really interesting to think about. And that's interesting is my favorite word for today, I guess. I've been saying it a lot. I'll try to slow it down. Farmer Mo says, I've only dreamt of shadow people. It was a dream within a dream. That was a long time ago. Yeah, I know how scary and strange and confusing it can be to wake up from a dream and still be in a dream but not realize it. You go about your day thinking that everything's normal, and then later on you wake up again and find out that everything that just happened is completely fake and fabricated, or as far as we know. It doesn't affect this reality anyway. That's all we can really say for sure. Anyways, on to my personal commentary about this story. So before I get into that though, I have a couple of confessions to make. So I know I've been an absentee YouTuber for quite some time now, making a video like once in a blue moon, basically. As many of you know, I recently changed careers and have been on the learning curve with my new path. It's going very well, by the way. However, that, along with overall family life and things like that, has left me with much less time for my YouTube channel. For some reason, though, I felt compelled to do this one for you all. I really hope you enjoyed it because it was a big one. It's a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of effort to get the video out the way I want it. So don't forget to let me know what you think about the visuals and the presentation. So for the true ODs, original dreamers that is, here are my actual thoughts on the story. First of all, I want to thank Daisy again for sharing her story. I sent her an email to let her know that 6 years later I finally got to her story. I'm happy to report to you all that she is alive and well, and she sends an aloha from the Big Island to all of you. Writing this story, which was my interpretation of Daisy's email, took me back in time to many days and nights I spent in, let's say, similar locations to where the events of this story took place. The kinds of places where bombs occasionally fall from the sky and dust works its way into everything. And those dreaded camel spiders. Don't even get me started. I also know the extremely eerie sensation of walking down dark streets, Alone at night on military bases, not a soul in sight. Under a desert sky, it's one of the most isolated feelings I've ever experienced. It's been a while since I've spoken about shadow people, but many of you may know these things and I go way back. My mother encountered them on her homeland of Jamaica when they tried to lure her and her siblings into jumping out of a second-story window in their home. I may have seen one or two myself in my younger days as well. I've often wondered what may be behind the stories of shadow people. These stories pop up all over the world and throughout history. What is the common thread that connects so many of these accounts, especially ones as vivid and terrifying as this one that we just heard? Are they or were they once human? Are they physical, or do they exist beyond the mortal plane? Are they something else entirely, something we cannot even comprehend? I wish I had an answer for that, honestly, but unfortunately, I haven't gotten any closer to an answer, even after all these years of talking about it. I have heard of people getting physically ill or experiencing other forms of distress, like being unable to breathe when in contact with a shadow person. If you have any theories, let's talk about them in the comments down below. I'm interested to hear if anyone has developed any new ideas since the last time I discussed shadow people on this channel, years ago. Anyway, if you're still listening, you already know what time it is. The code word for today is my favorite phrase from the story, musty hooch. Type it in a comment down below so I can see you. Take care, my friends. I'm Mr. X, and may your nights be full of dreams. Quick shout out to tonight's Super Chat sponsors, people who were kind enough to hit me with a little something something for this video. Tariko, Chihodl, Flipit, Sleepy, and Farmer Mo. Thank you all so much. A little extra special thank you for you all. And another thank you for Sam I Am, who came in from downtown in the last second to join the list of Super Chat sponsors for this video. Thanks, y'all. Later, my friends. All right. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, don't forget to like and share. If you made it to the very end, you're exactly the kind of subscriber I'm looking for. Don't forget to turn on those notifications. That way, you can catch the live show and discuss the stories with me. Your input might even appear in my next video. Last thing, if you heard a code word after the story, type it in a comment down below so I know who the real dreamers are. Take care, my friend. Until next time.